Target length 15 to 18 minutes, nearly 4,500 words. Source: Channel C Script 001, adapted for international audience. Created 2026-01-28. Word count, nearly 4,500 words. At a luxury hotel in Bangkok, a staff member shared something that surprised me. We can tell which country a guest is from just by looking at their table after breakfast. It wasn't about the food they chose, it wasn't about what language they spoke, it was about what they left behind, or rather, what they didn't leave behind. Today, I want to share why Japanese travelers have earned a unique reputation at buffets around the world, and what it reveals about a philosophy that's been passed down for generations. This isn't just about table manners, it's about a worldview. Thailand welcomes over 20 million tourists every year. Bangkok alone rivals Paris and London as one of the world's most visited cities. The city pulses with energy, ancient temples standing alongside gleaming skyscrapers, street food vendors cooking next to Michelin-starred restaurants, tuk-tuks weaving through traffic past luxury sedans. This is a city that knows hospitality. For centuries, the Thai people have welcomed travelers with what they call the Land of Smiles. And in the high-end hotels that dot the city center, there's one daily ritual that reveals more about cultural differences than almost anything else: the breakfast buffet. Picture it: fresh seafood on ice, prawns, crab, oysters, authentic Thai cuisine, pad thai, green curry, tom yum soup. A Western section with eggs cooked to order, bacon, pastries, fresh fruit. Japanese options: miso soup, grilled fish, rice, pickled vegetables. All of it beautifully arranged, constantly replenished, available in unlimited quantities. Take as much as you want. That's the promise of a buffet. But here's the thing: how people interpret "take as much as you want" varies dramatically from culture to culture, and hotel staff notice. They notice everything. A hotel general manager with over 30 years of experience once told me, "I've worked in hotels across Asia, Europe, and the Middle East, and I can tell you, the buffet is like a mirror. It reflects how someone was raised, how they approach the food, how much they take, how they eat it, what they leave behind, how they treat the space when they're done. It tells a story about their culture that words never could." He paused, then added, "Every morning, I watch guests from dozens of countries, and every morning, I learn something about human nature." What he didn't say, but what I came to understand through many conversations with hospitality professionals, is that staff talk to each other. They share observations. Over years and decades, patterns emerge. This nationality tends to do X. That group usually behaves like Y. These aren't stereotypes spoken in judgment. They're professional observations made by people who need to anticipate guest needs, manage resources, and keep the buffet running smoothly. And when it comes to Japanese guests, the observations are remarkably consistent, not just in Thailand, but in hotels across Asia, in cruise ships, in resorts worldwide. So what story do Japanese guests tell? Let me describe what hotel staff typically observe when Japanese guests arrive at a breakfast buffet. The differences are subtle at first. You might not notice unless you were looking, but once you see them, you can't unsee them. First, the approach. Japanese guests don't rush to the food stations. They take a moment to survey the entire buffet first. They walk along the counters, noting what's available, mentally planning what they'll take. This isn't hesitation, it's intentionality. They're thinking, what do I actually want to eat? How much can I realistically finish? How will these dishes go together on my plate? Only then do they pick up a plate. Second, the portions. Instead of piling a plate high with everything that looks good, a Japanese guest will take small amounts of several dishes. A few pieces of sashimi, a small portion of rice, one egg, some vegetables, a single pastry. The plate isn't full. There's a white space visible. The plate itself is part of the presentation. One chef at a Bangkok hotel described it this way: "The Japanese guests' plates look like art. Seriously, they could photograph those plates for a magazine. They consider the colors, the textures, the arrangement. They use the white space of the plate to make the food look beautiful. It's like they're creating a tiny gallery installation every morning." And here's the key part. They always finish everything. When the plate comes back, it's clean. Not a grain of rice left, not a bite untouched. Third, the queue. Even when there's an opening at a food station, even when they could easily reach in and grab something, Japanese guests wait their turn. They form an invisible queue that other guests often don't even realize exists. If the person ahead of them is taking their time choosing, they wait patiently. No sighing, no visible frustration, no trying to reach around. When it's their turn, they take what they need efficiently, then step aside so the next person can access the station. And when reaching for food, they always use the serving utensils provided. Tongs, spoons, forks, whatever is there, never their hands, never a utensil that was meant for a different dish. Fourth, and this is what surprises staff the most, they clean up after themselves. When Japanese guests finish eating, their tables look almost untouched. Used plates are stacked neatly to one side, often organized by size. Smaller plates on top of larger ones. Cutlery gathered together. Napkins aren't crumpled and tossed, they're folded and placed beside the plates. If something's spilled during the meal, they've already wiped it up with their napkin. Crumbs, gathered and contained. It's as if they're thinking, the staff shouldn't have to deal with my mess. Let me make their job a little easier. A hotel manager's quote went viral online a few years ago. Japanese guestsはspecial. Not because they have special requests. They actually have fewer special requests than most guests. Not because they are demanding. They're remarkably undemanding. They're special because they have special manners. When we see a group of Japanese guests coming to breakfast, we feel relieved. We know the morning will be smooth. And honestly, between us staff members, we sometimes wish all our guests could be like them. Another staff member added, "I've been doing this job for 15 years. In all that time, I've never seen a Japanese guest take food and waste it. Never seen them let their children run around unsupervised. Never heard them arguing loudly or talking on their phones during the meal. It's like they exist in their own little bubble of calm." But here's what's interesting. When I've asked Japanese travelers about this, they seem genuinely confused. "We were just eating breakfast," they say. "Wasn't everyone doing the same thing?" They don't see their behavior as exceptional. They see it as normal. Which raises the question, how did normal come to look so different? Let me add some context here, because I think it's important. The behaviors I'm describing aren't about good people versus bad people. They're about different cultural defaults, the unconscious assumptions we carry with us about how things should work. In some cultures, a buffet is seen as a competition. You pay a flat price, so the goal is to maximize what you get. Taking more than you can eat is smart. You're getting your money's worth. In some cultures, leaving food on your plate is actually polite. It signals to the host that you were given enough, that you're satisfied, not hungry. Finishing everything might suggest the host didn't provide generously. In some cultures, cleaning up after yourself at a restaurant would be strange. That's the staff's job. Why would you do it for them? Are you suggesting they're not doing their work? These aren't wrong perspectives. They're just different perspectives, shaped by different histories and social norms. The difference with Japanese guests, according to hotel staff, is consistency. One manager in Vietnam told me, "We serve guests from all over Asia, and I see a huge range of behaviors. But with Japanese guests, it's almost always the same. Clean plates, neat tables, quiet during meals, polite at the end. Whether it's a businessman traveling alone, a couple on their honeymoon, or a family with 3 kids, the pattern is the same. That consistency is what makes it notable." Another observation that comes up repeatedly, Japanese guests rarely complain. Not never, they're human, but rarely. If a dish isn't quite right, they might quietly push it aside rather than call a waiter over to demand a replacement. If the service is slow, they wait without visible frustration. If the buffet runs out of something, they simply choose something else. One staff member in Thailand put it bluntly, "In my job, I deal with complaints all day. It's part of the work. But from Japanese guests, almost nothing. And when they do have a concern, they raise it so gently, so apologetically, that I don't even feel like it's a complaint. More like a suggestion. It's refreshing." I want to be careful here. I'm not saying Japanese guests are perfect. I'm not saying guests from other countries are rude. Human behavior is a spectrum, and you'll find everything everywhere. But when multiple hotels in multiple countries across multiple decades report the same observations about Japanese guests specifically, that means something. It's not a coincidence. It's a pattern to a culture. And patterns have causes. So why do Japanese people behave this way at buffets? Is it just about being polite? Is it training? Is it some kind of cultural programming? The answer is yes to all of those, but it goes much deeper. To understand Japanese food behavior, you need to understand 3 things: a word, a ritual, and a history. Let's start with the word, mottainai. You've probably heard this word before. It's often translated as "what a waste" or "don't waste it." But that translation misses something crucial. Mottainai isn't just about not throwing things away. It's a feeling, almost a spiritual sensation, of regret when something's potential goes unrealized. If you throw away a half-eaten meal, that's mottainai. But it's also mottainai if you don't use your talents. It's mottainai if you let a relationship die from neglect. It's mottainai if you spend your life doing something that doesn't matter to you. The word carries weight. It implies that everything has inherent value, and that failing to honor that value is a kind of small tragedy. In 2004, Kenyan environmental activist Wangari Maathai visited Japan and encountered this word. She was deeply moved. She said that mottainai contains not just reduce, reuse, recycle, the 3 R's that environmentalists talk about, but also a 4th R, respect. Respect for resources, respect for the labor that created something, respect for nature, respect for life itself. Maathai brought this word to the global stage, even mentioning it in her Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech. She started a mottainai campaign in Africa, using this Japanese concept to promote environmental awareness. Today, mottainai is recognized worldwide as a uniquely Japanese philosophy. But for Japanese people, it's not a philosophy they study, it's something they breathe. Now let's talk about the ritual. In Japanese schools, there's no cafeteria staff serving lunch. No lunch ladies, no service line, no adults dishing out portions. The students do it themselves. Here's how it works. Every day, a rotating group of students is assigned to Kyushoku Toban, lunch duty. These children put on white aprons and caps that look almost like doctor's scrubs. They're responsible for carrying the food containers from the kitchen to the classroom, setting up the serving station, portioning out the food equally to every classmate, making sure everyone gets their share. This isn't a special event. This is every single day from 1st grade through 9th grade. And before anyone takes a single bite, the entire class says together, "Itadakimasu." Literally, this means "I humbly receive," but its meaning runs much deeper. When Japanese people say "Itadakimasu," they're expressing gratitude to the animals and plants that died to become the meal, the farmers who grew the vegetables, the fishermen who caught the fish, the truck drivers who transported it, the lunch staff who cooked it, the classmates who served it, and ultimately the sun and rain and earth that made it all possible. All of that packed into one word spoken automatically before every meal. Children learn this ritual before they can fully understand what it means. By the time they're old enough to think about it, it's already part of them. After eating, the class says, "Gochiso-sama deshita." This translates roughly to "thank you for the feast," But again, there's more to it. The word chiso originally meant running around, referring to all the effort that went into preparing the meal. Then comes the cleanup. Children wash their own dishes. Milk cartons are opened, rinsed, dried, and stacked for recycling. Tables are wiped down. Floors are swept. This happens every school day for 9 years. By the time Japanese children become adults, finishing their food and cleaning up isn't a conscious choice. It's not something they decide to do. It's simply who they are. But there's also history. Japan has always been an agricultural society with extremely limited farmland. Look at a map. Mountains cover about 73% of the country. That leaves a narrow strip of usable land along the coasts and in the valleys. For most of Japanese history, there simply wasn't enough space to grow excess food. This created a culture of scarcity mindset, even in good times. Food was always precious. Rice, in particular, held almost sacred status. Growing rice isn't simple. You need flat land that can be flooded and drained. You need reliable water sources. You need cooperative labor. One family couldn't do it alone. Communities had to work together, sharing water rights, coordinating planting and harvest schedules. This necessity of cooperation shaped Japanese society in profound ways. The individual had to fit into the group. Selfishness could endanger everyone. There's an old saying, 7 gods live in a single grain of rice. Another goes, 1,000 hands touch each grain before it reaches your bowl. These aren't just poetic phrases, they're moral teachings. Wasting food wasn't just impractical, it was considered disrespectful to the gods, to ancestors, to the land itself, to all the neighbors whose labor made your meal possible. During the Edo period, the shogunate actually enforced sumptuary laws that restricted how much food different social classes could consume. Even wealthy merchant families couldn't openly display extravagance. Modesty was legally mandated. This created a cuisine culture that emphasizes quality over quantity, small portions beautifully presented, the opposite of all you can eat. And then there's living memory. Many Japanese people alive today were raised by grandparents who lived through World War II and the severe food shortages that followed. Those years were traumatic. People ate weeds, insects, anything they could find. Children went hungry. Families starved. In 1945, immediately after the war ended, Japan's food supply was so dire that American occupation forces had to provide emergency rations. Japanese newspapers published articles teaching people how to find edible plants in the wild. Some cities organized bamboo shoot hunts in public parks. For that generation, throwing away food wasn't just wasteful, it felt almost sinful, a betrayal of the dead, a denial of the suffering they'd endured, and they passed that perspective to their children, who passed it to theirs. Even today, in a Japan of abundance, with convenience stores on every corner, vending machines everywhere, supermarkets stocked to overflowing, parents tell their children, "Don't leave anything on your plate. Finish your rice, every grain. Remember, someone worked hard to make this for you." The words may sound old-fashioned, but they carry the weight of history, the voice of grandparents, the memory of hunger. When stories about Japanese buffet behavior started spreading online, people around the world responded. From the United States, I read that Japanese kids serve and clean up their own school lunches, starting from age 6. 6! No wonder they act this way as adults. We could really learn from this. My kids can barely clean their rooms. From the UK, when I traveled to Japan, the quiet in restaurants surprised me at first. I kept thinking something was wrong, but then I realized it was actually peaceful. You could focus on the food, on your companions, on the experience. We've lost that in the West. From Germany, as someone who cares about efficiency, I find Japanese behavior at buffets to be extremely rational. Take what you need, eat what you take. Don't create waste. Don't slow down the system for others. This should be common sense, but apparently it isn't. From Australia, Not wasting food at buffets is great for the environment too. With global food waste being such a massive problem, like a third of all food produced gets thrown away, Japan's approach makes so much sense. It's not just polite, it's sustainable. Presenting food beautifully, that's something we France value too. I feel a connection with Japanese culture in that way. Though I admit, we France sometimes prioritize aesthetics over not wasting. Maybe we should find a balance. As a Thai person who works in hospitality, I want to say, we adore Japanese guests. They're respectful, considerate, and appreciative. They make our jobs easier, and they seem to genuinely enjoy our country. They're the best tourists we receive. The broader context matters here. The United Nations estimates that around 1.3 billion tons of food is wasted globally every year. That's about 1/3 of all food produced for human consumption. Meanwhile, nearly 800 million people don't have enough to eat. The environmental impact is staggering. Food waste generates about 8 to 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions. If food waste were a country, it would be the third largest emitter in the world, after the US and China. In this context, the Japanese approach to food, taking only what you need, appreciating every bite, leaving nothing behind, isn't just polite behavior. It's a model. It's what sustainable food consumption actually looks like in practice, not as a policy, not as a campaign, but as daily habit, ingrained from childhood. I want to be clear about something. The behaviors I've described aren't unique to every Japanese person. There are Japanese people who waste food, just as there are people from every country who are thoughtful and considerate. This isn't about claiming that Japan is better than other countries. That kind of thinking misses the point entirely. But there is a reason why Japanese guests, in particular, have earned this reputation at hotels around the world, and that reason is worth understanding. It's not because Japanese people are inherently more virtuous, it's not something in the genes, it's not magic. It's because of systems. Think about what we've covered, the school lunch system. Every day, for 9 years, children serve each other food and clean up together. No adults do it for them. They learn responsibility through practice. The language itself. Every meal begins with itadakimasu and ends with gochisousama deshita. These aren't empty phrases. They're built-in reminders of gratitude, spoken so many thousands of times that they become reflex. The family tradition. Parents tell children, finish your rice, every grain. Grandparents share memories of harder times when food was scarce. The message is reinforced across generations. The societal expectation. Restaurants in Japan often charge fees for excessive leftovers. Food waste is seen as embarrassing, not just wasteful. There's gentle social pressure to not be that person who takes too much. All of these systems work together, reinforcing the same values from different angles. It's not one thing, it's everything. Let me share a personal observation. When I watch a Japanese family at a restaurant, parents with young children, I notice something specific. The parents don't just order food for their kids, they order a portion size they believe the child can finish. If the child looks like they're getting full, the parent will offer to help finish the dish, or they'll quietly take the remaining food onto their own plate. Nothing is said about it. There's no lecture about starving children in Africa. It's just what you do. The parents are modeling the behavior, and the children are absorbing it. By the time those children become adults, they won't think about portion sizes consciously. They'll just naturally take the amount they can eat. It's been programmed through thousands of meals. This extends beyond restaurants. Japanese convenience stores discount their ready-made bento boxes as closing time approaches. This isn't just a profit strategy, it's a response to Japanese consumers who find it uncomfortable to buy food that might get thrown away if not sold. And when Japanese stores visit other countries, they carry these habits with them, often without even realizing how unusual they appear. They're not trying to impress anyone. They're not performing for an audience. They're just behaving the way they've always behaved, taking small portions, finishing everything, stacking plates neatly, saying thank you. To them, it's normal, unremarkable, not worth mentioning, which is precisely why it stands out so much to everyone else. A hotel chef in Kyoto once told me something that stuck with me. He said, "When I see a guest finish every bite and stack their plates neatly, I feel happy. Not because they've followed some rule, but because they've respected my work. Every dish I make, I put my heart into. When someone wastes it, honestly, it hurts a little. When someone honors it by finishing, that's the best compliment a chef can receive." He paused, then added, "Most Japanese guests don't know they're giving me that compliment. They're just eating the way they always eat, but I feel it anyway." Maybe that's the real lesson here. Not that we should all try to act Japanese, not that there's one right way to eat at buffets, not that people from other cultures are doing something wrong, but rather the small, invisible habits we develop as children, the things we do without thinking, those matter. They shape who we become. They shape how we affect others. They shape, in their own small way, the kind of world we create. The UN says 1.3 billion tons of food is wasted every year. That's an incomprehensibly large number. But that number is made up of individual meals, individual plates, individual decisions. What if more people took only what they needed? What if finishing your food wasn't seen as old-fashioned advice from grandparents, but as a reasonable, practical approach to living? I'm not saying Japan has all the answers. Every culture has wisdom to share. But if you want an example of what it looks like when an entire society treats food with respect, when that value is embedded in education, language, family, and commerce, this is what it looks like. Empty plates, folded napkins, a quiet thank you. Not dramatic, not showy, just consistent, every single day. A simple breakfast buffet in Bangkok. An everyday moment that most guests barely remember. Yet for hotel staff, it became a window into something profound, a culture that teaches its children to respect food, consider others, and leave things better than they found them, not through lectures, not through punishment, but through daily practice until it becomes second nature. An empty plate, a folded napkin, a quiet thank you, small gestures, but maybe that's where it all starts. If this video gave you a new perspective, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever noticed cultural differences in how people approach food? Maybe you've traveled to Japan and experienced this yourself. Or maybe you have your own Motenai story. Let me know. I read every comment. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.